the open forum to be addressed before the next phase, or having alderpersons speak?
Okay, we will do the best we can with those, Alderperson Cunninger. So I think staff here took some of them down and maybe can handle some of those. Larry, what do we got? Are you on? Oh, the one question regarding sunset. So how do we want to handle that part of it? There will not. Under the current proposal, there will not be a sunset under the current resolution.
Well, I can answer that. This is
Kristen's going to go.
Sorry, this is Assistant City Attorney Kristen Johnson. As proposed, it does include a sunset provision, but it's repealed upon termination of the City of De Pere's declaration of emergency. So that's when this would sunset. It would be automatically repealed upon termination of City of De Pere's declaration of emergency.
Does that answer your question for that one? Other questions you might have?
Well, one of the other questions, this is Larry, one of the other questions was, who does it serve? I believe the intent of the ordinance is to serve everyone who either lives in, visits, or works in the City of De Pere. That would be who it serves. The one gentleman had a list of questions. There was 3 or 4 that, based on the response I was getting from the health officer and even from myself, when he was asking those, there would not be an answer for. And he even, after he finished asking those questions, said that he already knew the answer was no. So I don't recall the specific question. But anyways, there was 3 questions, I think, that were asked on something that we do not have the data for. I'll just say right now, we do not have the data for those questions.
And that was regarding masks going on and off and things like that.
Yeah, the question of if there's a dirty mask, what is the impact?
Sure.
There's, if you have the mask not over the nose, what is the impact? Those types of questions, we do not have the data for those.
Thank you. I'm trying to think of the other questions. A lot of them were statements and not questions. So does that help, Alderperson Cunninger? Did you write some down as well?
I have questions as well, but I just wanted to, we had referenced that they would be addressed at this portion. I think,
yeah, and if someone else thinks or has something else written down from the audience, I'm talking alderpersons, please feel free to let us know, and we'll see if we can address that.
Yeah, Mayor, it's Alderperson Rash.
Alderperson Rash, go ahead.
I think you did answer a couple of them, but to Larry's point on the ones that were raised, I believe it was 3 questions raised about the effectiveness of the masks. I don't think I got them all down correctly, but it had to do with, how effective is the mask mandate if you're walking into a restaurant with it on but then taking it off, or moving about the restaurant. What is the effectiveness of a mask if it's being worn where it's below the nose? I believe might have been one of the other questions. And then if people are continuously wearing dirty masks because they're not taking care of them or they're not changing them out or washing them, is there issues with that related to the health of the general public around them as well? I think that's what they might have done.
I think you are correct, Alderperson Rash, and I think Debbie's going to try to tackle these.
So regarding the wearing of a mask in the restaurant, the mask should be worn during the time that they're at the restaurant until they're sitting and either eating or drinking something. And when they are done with that and leaving the table, they should be putting the mask back on and on until they leave the restaurant. As far as a dirty mask, you are absolutely correct. It's not as durable. It's not as desirable as a clean mask, and that's why we would encourage, as CDC does, that a person wear a new mask every day if possible. Certainly if it's been soiled in any way, it should be cleaned prior to wearing it again.
And I think the last one Alderperson Rash had said was about the nose,
That's correct as well. The mask is not as effective if it doesn't cover both the nose and the mouth. So that is correct.
So just really quick, Debbie, on that then with the, so if we're having those issues, then really the effectiveness of the mask mandate could be minimized quite a bit by people not doing the right things. How do we I guess for lack of a better term, how do we police that so that we're enforcing those requirements as well?
And that's a good question. I will say that we have worked very hard, and I'm speaking of our sanitarian, working with our licensed establishments and myself as well to tell them what best practices are within their establishment. And one of those best practices, of course, is masking. So we ask that they encourage their staff to mask accordingly, and we teach them what that is. I'm not suggesting that the establishment owner go to someone and tell them they're not wearing the mask appropriately. I would hope with education that we're giving that people will learn to wear the mask appropriately. I'm not sure how much further we could police that.
And Alderperson Rash, I think the FAQ from Green Bay was sent out for the alderpersons to look at, and that stuff can be included in the FAQs for businesses and individuals to give them guidance on how to wear a mask properly. So that's something that we'll take down and something that we can look at to give them help and guidance.
So, and I didn't have a chance to read the FAQ only because of my work schedule outside of council obligations. However, I guess I'm concerned about a mandating people to wear a mask, but we can't even get them to do it properly. So it's the enforcement question with this that concerns me, that now we're going to create a citizen police force that's going to call people out and potentially throw avocados at them in the store and things like that. So that's one of my concerns with the proper use of it. So I do appreciate Debbie's answers. I just struggle with, how effective and how the ability for us to actually even control the mandate in a way that even serves its purpose.
Sure. Sure, Alderperson Rash. I'll just kind of go to someone else if they haven't. If you have more questions, obviously you can ask. Any other questions, comments, or discussions by the alderpersons?
This is Amy. I have a couple questions.
Alderperson Cunninger, go ahead.
Yes. My first question is around the timing. As many citizens and constituents have brought up, both the timing with sunset, which has been addressed, but also the timing for it to start, which would be today, provided we get done with this meeting today. But my question would be more along the lines of what some other people have asked about and talked about, as far as the city being able to provide and not necessarily deliver, but make materials available such that businesses and or places where people inside spaces where they congregate, they have a reference to point to. And we keep talking about the policing aspect of this. I would much rather think of this as an educational aspect, like many of our ordinances are. I liken it more to a car seat example. Many people don't put their car seats in correctly. That doesn't mean that we don't still want to educate further to make sure that that percentage changes. That's how I would like to see the mandate run. So my first question is around the signage. I would like to see the date and some kind of resource above and beyond the FAQs that can go out to places of businesses that they can put up so that they can say, this is the ordinance, this is what's in, this is what's out, and this is why I'm asking you to support wearing a face mask.
Sure, very good point. Sorry.
My second question is regarding in the ordinance. I just need some clarification on this. The ordinance calls out ages of children. At some point, or in the beginning of the ordinance, it mentions 2 years old. Further down, it says 5 years old. I just want to be clear again for what the actual age. From reading it, I read it as 5, but I just want to be sure that is correct in my assumption. In the enforcement portion, I, again, feel very strongly with what many of the voices tonight have talked about. We will not move forward as a city if shaming, and I don't believe this is the intent, if shaming is the approach, and part of that is around fines and such. So I ask, one, that the first step in any violation, if you will, is educational in nature. I think that goes a long way in trying to change and drive the outcome that we want, and that is getting all of us to act as a greater good for all of us as well. It's a mutually symbolic or a symbiotic relationship, but everybody needs education in doing that. So I asked that that would be included or changed. If that's a resolution or a amendment, I would be happy to propose that. So that's it. That's my stuff.
Okay, so we're going to kind of shove out to a bunch of people here to answer those for you, Alderperson Cuniger. I do think the last one, however, no, that's fine. So who wants to take what? Kristen?
This is Kristen. I can take a couple of those questions. First, the ordinance would not take effect today. It does need a second reading, so it would have to come back unless it's passed unanimously. Then it would take effect today. But if it's not passed unanimously, when it's published, which would be whenever the clerk gets it published, which is usually a day or two. But it would need a second reading if it's not passed unanimously. So that would be theoretically on the agenda for the next council meeting. And then if it passes that meeting, then it would take effect upon publication. Another question that I can answer is regarding the ages listed in the ordinance. I think on page 2, you're referencing where the CDC recommends people of all ages 2 years or older wear a mask, but the actual ordinance states that it's 5 years or older. So you're correct that the ordinance does state 5 years.
Does that answer all of them, or do we miss one? No, wait, Debbie, Debbie, go ahead. We're still going. Debbie.
If I may. So as I said before, what we are doing is working a lot with the businesses, and we have a poster that they can put up saying that they have worked with the health department to try to make their establishments safe. So I really like the idea, and I believe masking is included on that, but I really like the idea of us doing specific working with the establishments and doing the educational piece as far as correct masking. And I would go further to say that I think it would be up to the health department to make a video to show the proper way of masking, and then let that be available to the community. So thank you for that suggestion. I think that's great.
Did we get them all, Alderperson Cuniger?
No, the last one was around the enforcement piece, and I know that might be more of a resolution aspect of it, because that's where it's clearly laid out, but just that the first nature of it would be education rather than fine, or even clarification if fines could go directly back to businesses to support education, supplies, so on and so forth.
Kristen, you want to try that one?
Well, regarding the enforcement, listed in the ordinance, it does state that the health director, police chief, their designees are authorized to enforce this section. Much like a lot of our ordinances and other laws, the police and the enforcement agents will have discretion when it comes to enforcing and issuing citations. So if it's much like a police officer giving a warning, if that's something that, the police chief or the supervisors instruct them to do at first glance, that's something that can be done. If you want that written in the ordinance, that the first thing would be a warning, that's certainly something that can be added as well.
Would I have, for clarification, would I have to request that amendment?
Would that be item 3 on the agenda, or can she do that right now?
Yeah, I think it is. That would be where I'll bring it up then. Okay.
Oh, it's within the ordinance, so yes, that's something that you could bring up as an amendment. Alderperson Cuniger, if that's what you want to do. I don't know if you want to wait and listen to everyone else first before you start proposing amendments, or if you want to throw it in right now, it's entirely up to you.
I'll wait, but that's what I'll do after everyone's spoken. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Other alderpersons?
Alderperson Hanson.
Alderperson Hanson, go ahead.
In terms of the enforcement mechanism on businesses, the main leverage the city has is potentially revoking or not renewing their licenses. Obviously, not all businesses have license. So what recourse would the city potentially have for a business establishment that doesn't have a license and that is deliberately not complying with the ordinance?
Larry?
The only recourse we would have per the ordinance as it's drafted and a resolution is the fine system. So you could do the education if that was first. You could then do the $10 fine. You can have escalating fines or citations, I guess is a better way to say it. But if they do not have any city-issued licenses, obviously we have nothing that we can revoke.
So who would be fined? The business owner or the manager on duty?
Currently, it's the person that is not wearing the mask is how the ordinance and resolution is drafted.
What if the business owner is wearing a mask but is allowing people into the business without masks, even if they don't have a medical condition?
Again, under the current draft that you have before you, the individual that is not wearing the mask would be the one that would receive the citation. And again, the way it's drafted, I believe, is that the business would not be asking the person to justify the medical condition. It would just simply, if they chose to, ask them if they have a reason or however they would state it for the mask or not to wear the mask. So that the person doesn't need to identify the specific condition or reason why, other than to say that it's a medical condition or something along those lines.
If an employee within the business wasn't wearing a mask, they could be potentially subject to the fine.
Yes, any individual that's not wearing a mask is the subject of the citation, not the business itself. That's how it's drafted.
Okay. And then lastly, the exemption for places of worship. I know I got some feedback on that, wondering why that's in there. My understanding is that because it's in the Green Bay ordinance, it was added as an amendment at the Green Bay Council meeting. We wanted to mirror Green Bay's as much as possible. I don't know if Mayor Boyd can elaborate on why, if that was the exact reason why he put that in there, or if staff drafted it that way.
Yeah, and then maybe Kristen or Larry can chime in as well, but if you remember, I don't know, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, there was a lawsuit regarding some churches in the city of De Pere. Isn't that part of it? And we were not successful. And then the interpretation was that if we had something along that line, we wouldn't have much success going forward. Larry?
No, I wouldn't connect it directly that way, but the intent was for us, because of consistency and trying to get consistency within the metropolitan area. We looked at the Green Bay ordinance and tried to mirror that as much as possible to match in, so that we would have consistency. So I think the main reason that it was brought forward that way is because that is how Green Bay adopted theirs, and we were trying to make sure there was consistency in the metro.
And that was the main reason, and I apologize for the other part of it, because I thought I heard that from somebody in all of our discussions, and I could have been off. So that would have been the main reason then, Alderperson Hanson.
Okay, thank you.
Other alderpersons?
This is Alderperson Rue.
Alderperson Rue, go ahead.
So if the goal is to act for the greater good, and we already foresee some issues with enforcement, wouldn't we get more buy-in from the people if we proceeded with an advisory rather than the mandate? Can you clarify why the mandate route was selected here?
Well, I can say on behalf of myself in talking with Green Bay, and then looking at other municipalities, that universally they said a mandate would work far better than a recommendation. Also, in talking with the businesses when they reached out to me, that was probably their primary concern was the employees all mask up, and then coming into the store would be some customers and patrons that were not, and they felt it was far better to have a mandate requiring customers to mask up because their employees are. So for the safety of both of them, that's why I went ahead with the mandate. And I think clearly the mandate would be far more effective than a recommendation.
I think what we heard on the call tonight, though, I mean, there were a lot of those in the anti-mask crowd, if you will. But what I heard from the majority of them was, just let it be my choice. And I think if we're asking for people to buy into that, and we really want them to mask up and be respectful of businesses and their employees and all of that, that the way to do that is by getting their buy-in. And I think one way to do that is by going the advisory route rather than mandate. And I would say that that's a lot of what I heard in the comments that I received to me via email and the phone calls I did receive, was more or less a discussion of, I already support masks, I'm not supportive of a requirement for masks. And if anything, I think it's similar to kids. You know, you tell them you want them to make their beds, and they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. But if you just, you know, it's all in how you sell it. And I think you'd simply get more buy-in from our people and cooperation and unity in our community if this were an advisory. Thank you.
Thank you. And I promise you, I wish that would work, but clearly in my discussions, that is simply not the case. So we may have had some different phone calls and emails and text, and that very well could be Alderperson Rue. It really could. Other comments and or suggestions or questions?
Alderperson Hanson.
Alderperson Hanson, go ahead.
Yeah, back to Alderperson Rue's point about businesses and trying to police this. We did hear from one business owner who does require masks right now, and his employees are in a difficult spot because when customers come in and they try to explain, you know, it's the policy of this business to not allow people without masks in, they say, well, the store across the street doesn't require masks, so why are you requiring the mask? So I think there is a lot of value in having a consistent policy throughout the city. Just real quick, the paragraph that he wrote that stood out to me said the most important thing to consider, however, is that this is a way to protect small businesses' employees from having to be the enforcer of each business's policy. If it was a citywide ordinance, the employees would be saved from having to argue with customers about why they are requesting masks. It backs them up, it saves them from political arguments, it protects them from verbal abuse. So I think that was a very important point in getting to what Mayor Boyd said, where I do think the business owners who have been requiring the mask, it would be beneficial for their employees to have the city backing them up by requiring it throughout the city, so they could point to the city ordinance for why they are enforcing this and not the policy of their particular business. Thank you.
Thank you. Other alderpersons?
So Alderperson Rash.
Alderperson Rash.
Hey, this is really, I've got more stuff written down, but I just want to get this one out first. And maybe I misunderstood this, but in the conversation about enforcement, it was mentioned that businesses are really not the ones enforcing this ordinance. So if somebody walks in, they can ask them to put it on, but it's really not up to the business owner or employees to actually step in and enforce this. This falls on the way the ordinance is currently crafted. It falls on the police chief as surrogates and the health director. So if they're really not, they can ask, they can call the police to have the police come out who could be doing better things. But isn't this going to create some more potential conflict between patrons for those that aren't wearing it and those that are, where they feel they've got to step in and they've got to be the police for this situation? So I'm concerned that this puts our businesses into an even more difficult position where we have a mask mandate and we are not able to enforce in the time frame that might need to be done here. So I respect what Alderperson Hanson said, but I disagree that this might create some additional conflict that we're not foreseeing. So I believe there, in contrast to what the mayor had said just a second ago, I do believe there are other ways to go about this and get buy-in versus mandating and putting a stick to the situation to force people to do it. And I'll save the rest of my comments for a little bit later.
I'm sorry. I can give a little clarification. I had a conversation with Mayor Gingrich from Green Bay yesterday and today, and in his conversations with the police chief, I can give a little bit of an assessment of how things are going just in 2 days. In Green Bay, they're going very well. They really have had complete buy-in, not complete, but a lot of buy-in from both the businesses and the citizens, and it was done very peacefully. Mayor Gingrich said he was extremely encouraged on how this has been going for 2 days. And it basically is a resolution that we have before us that we like to have an ordinance. So between he and the police chief, Chief Smith, they're extremely pleased. So whatever was in their ordinance, which is similar to what you have in front of you, most people are buying in. And most businesses in Green Bay are extremely appreciative of it. So they have had no issues whatsoever at this time in Green Bay.
Okay, and then for the record, Mayor, with all due respect, I would appreciate that we focus on the city of De Pere and our needs and not the needs of the city of Green Bay as put forth by Mayor Gingrich.
Thank you very much. Any other alderpersons?
This is Casey.
Alderperson Nelson, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I definitely. All right, I think I hit mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, sorry. I just want to say, so yeah, I definitely support this ordinance to require mask usage. I think it's our best, as part of kind of a combination strategy. It's our best option at this point. None of us here want to be talking about this tonight. None of us wish that we're in this position that we're in tonight. For me to vote that I want my 6-year-old to have to wear a mask when he starts kindergarten this year, I mean, it's horrible that we're in this situation, but unfortunately we're in this situation and we are here to try to make the best of it. And the best way out of this, from everything that we know today, and then granted, this stuff changes. It's a brand new virus. We don't know everything about it, obviously. I work at the VA. We've been wearing masks since I think early April or early May. Everybody wears them every day. It's kind of part of this, at least our department feels like it's kind of this social contract that we protect, we're protecting each other from this virus. It's not comfortable, it's not fun, but we're all doing our part. None of the, all the vets wear them every time they come to the clinic. We've gotten very little complaint from them, and I think that's most disappointing thing about this whole thing to me is that there's no we're all in this together, let's find a way out of this right now going on in this country. And I think that's a big reason why we're in kind of a bad situation compared to a lot of other countries. I still got emails and phone calls that this is all a hoax, that it's an election year, that it's going to go away after November. And COVID, it's a big deal. And I think if we all can just agree, we might disagree about some of the details, but if we can all do what needs to be done and have this, we're in this together, we need to figure out a way to protect each other. I think it'll go a long way. But I think at this point, treatments have gotten better, but they're still not great. We don't have a vaccine for at least, who knows, probably 6 months, a year, at the earliest. We don't have the capacity for quick turnaround testing for contact tracing. So what we're left with is hygiene and mask usage. So at this point, I'm in full support of this, and I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderperson Nelson. Any other alderpersons like to speak?
This is Mike.
Alderperson Esserkan, go ahead.
Yeah. So I did also have a number of contact with business owners who were in favor of the mask ordinance, in the idea that the city would have their back, that they could be able to help out with enforcing it. Most of their businesses already enforce the a mask ordinance for their own business. I was wondering if do we have anyone on here from our police department, and do they have an opinion on their participation in the enforcement?
Derek, are you out there? I believe they are not. I don't know what do you have, a direct question that we can try to answer? They are okay with how the ordinance is written, if that answers your question. They're aware of that.
I guess that answers it if they're okay with it.
Yes, they are. They're just waiting on guidance from the ordinance.
Okay. Well, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from alderpersons?
This is Shayna.
Alderperson Ledvina, go ahead, please.
Thanks. I want to speak to somebody on the phone call. He made a phone call in and made a comment about the number of people that spoke out tonight live during the meeting that were in support of masks, or that weren't in support of masks, as opposed to the callers that were in support of masks. And I just want to state for the record that we've been receiving feedback on this since it was announced last Thursday, I believe, in the form of emails, phone calls. I personally have been tracking everything I've received, and I've received 132 emails and phone calls before tonight's meeting. And 70% of the people that contacted me supported a mandate. Of those 132 people that reached out to me, 88 of them were actual city residents and lived within the city limits. And of those 88 people, 88% supported a mandate and 12% did not. And also many of the people who spoke tonight were already included in those numbers I mentioned because they had reached out previously via email. So I just wanted to point that out because I think that happened in Green Bay as well, where alderpersons in Green Bay received a lot of support on the front end of the meeting, and then during the meeting, the majority of people that spoke were opposed. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll kind of add to that as well. And my numbers, by the way, are very similar to yours. I had some different phone calls, emails, and texts, very similar. So I won't go into that. But the City of De Pere has a Facebook page. And on the Facebook page, when they posted the announcement, they had, obviously on the page itself, there were many comments and it went back and forth. But with the faces on the Facebook page, 134 people commented with the emoji. And of the 134 people, 100 people gave thumbs up, 15 people gave a heart. There were 2 smiley happy faces, 15 angry faces, and 2 crying faces. So, and this is from Andy, our communications director, out of 134, 117 were in support of the face mask mandate on the city Facebook page, and that's 87%. So, didn't mean to get too technical with you out there with the angry faces and smiley faces. So 87% on the Facebook page. Other alderpersons?
This is Mike Estercon again. I'm sorry to jump in a second time.
Alderperson Estercon, go ahead. Do not be sorry.
I just want to add on to both the last what you had just said and Shana just said that I actually had numerous people contact me as well, numerous, like a handful, 5 people or so, who did not want to speak out at the meeting because they had to list their name and address and for fear of that. And I understand why we have that policy. I'm just saying that may have also skewed some results as well.
Thank you very much. Other alderpersons?
This is Alderperson Rue. I mean, as long as we're talking numbers, I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, Alderperson Rue, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. As long as we're talking numbers, I think we've all been bombarded with emails, calls, etc. Feel for you all. I think I had closer to 200, and I'll be honest, it was like a 50-50 split right down the middle. What I did see, interestingly enough, was a form letter that seemed to pass around. I think I had, at last count, over 20 of those, the same letter, sent by multiple individuals. What I was not able to do was get a response from all of these on who was a resident of De Pere, who was not. Some provided their addresses, some did not, some gave their names, some did not. So it was interesting in looking at that. I think, you know, we can talk about, Mr. Mayor, the Facebook page, but just like the posting today about the diversity study that we're asking people to complete, that page and that study, it's open to everybody, right? So not just people who reside in De Pere, send their kids to school in De Pere. I think it's important that we focus on the needs of our constituents. And I'll just let it be said there.
And that's a very good point, Alderperson Rue. I agree with you 100%. As a matter of fact, the callers we had call in, I think I did a little tally here. A good percentage of those were out of De Pere. So I agree with you that it's very important to listen to our De Pere residents. I agree with you.
I did a tally as well. This is Shana.
Alderperson Ledvina.
I just love looking at people's addresses on the Brown County Land Records website. If people don't know that you can do that, you can. And you can see which municipality they fall in. And we had 31 people call in tonight, and only 11 of them were actual residents of the city. So thought that was interesting.
Thank you very much. Other comments or questions or discussions that you have, alderpersons, or amendments, or whatever you want to do?
Alderperson Carpenter.
Alderperson Carpenter, go ahead.
Yes, as they speak, I was kind of with Alderperson Rule on probably the 50-50, and I apologize if I didn't get back to anybody that sent me all these emails and everything, but I only responded to the people that requested a response. I didn't respond to all these individuals. And to Shana's comment, yes, Shana, you are correct. how the number was online on phone tonight, and it was 12 for a no and 6 for yes in one no position. There was a lot of people that were non-residents, which I would like to say to them, they should go to their community and request that their board people, or whatever type of members they have, get an ordinance and get one going too, since they're so concerned about De Pere. So I have some questions and thoughts here. I really don't know why churches are excluded. I just think it's another divide. And then we are going to allow, when you go to a bar and a restaurant, you have to be masked when you go in. And once you get seated, then you can take your mask off while you're eating or drinking. So everybody that eats speaks. And if somebody said over in a doctor or some physician that spray goes 30 feet or so. I think a lot of this was brought up about why we're getting to this point was because of we opened up too soon. We let too many people get in gatherings. We're still allowing these gatherings, except we're just going to make a mask before they get there. They can take it off. If I'm sitting at a bar, do I have to wear my mask when I'm not drinking? How do you tell if I'm going to be drinking? There's so many complications to this that I really would go with Alderperson Rule and make an advisory to this. There's so much stuff that I don't understand on this, why we have this going on. And then it was about the sunset, and it can't be amended, but we can amend other parts of this ordinance. I would like an answer to that. Thank you.
No, I don't think that was said that way. Anything can be amended within the ordinance, within the resolution.
Okay, so we can, if I thought.
No, you can do what you like as far as amendments and stuff, Alderperson Carpenter.
Okay, so maybe, I don't know if there's any of the doctors, how do they think, can somebody just fill in how this is going to be about? And when we go back to St. Norbert College, all these students going to be coming back, all those, we know college students, and if they're of age, we know where they're going. So I just don't see this as, I think it could be more educational, more advisory than making this an ordinance. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments and/or discussions?
Yeah, this is Alderperson Rash.
Alderperson Rash, I think you were in first, I think. Alderperson Rash.
I'll let Alderperson Rue go first.
Alderperson Rue, go ahead. That's very kind, Alderperson Rash.
Every once in a while, I'll throw out a bone there, James.
Yes, you will.
I think forgive me, I'm an accountant, so I do zero in on numbers. And when I hear that we've all kind of been tallying those who called in tonight, I too kept track, or tried to keep track, of the ones who lived in De Pere versus those who didn't. I just wanted to clarify, I do think we need to give some grace to the parents who did call in tonight, mainly concerned about their children having to wear masks in our schools. They choice into De Pere. So from that perspective, they are directly impacted by what we are voting on tonight. And I think we need to remember that and simply recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderperson Rue. By the way, for the record, I'll get you in a second, Alderperson Rash. For the record, the Unified School District of De Pere in the board meeting last week and the recommendation of the board will require masks to be worn for K through 12 in their schools. That's already in play. I believe West De Pere is going to make an announcement very soon as well, which I will not reveal. But the Unified School District of De Pere will require mask wearing for K through 12. Okay? Just to give clarification on that. And then if you want to get some information about their mask mandate, you can go to the Unified School District of De Pere's webpage, and then they have an FAQ explaining how they wear masks, who has to wear masks, etc. Alderperson Rash, your turn.
All right. Thanks, Mayor. And that almost sounded like an infomercial from a former teacher of the Unified School District of De Pere.
It could have been, yeah, possibly.
All right, so a couple of questions, and I do have some amendments that I want to discuss as well. And the hopes on the amendments is that we can take them individually, because if we tie them together, I think, you know, I prefer they be done individually just to see where they go. Question for either Larry or Debbie. We talked about, and Alderperson Hanson brought this up regarding licensed businesses in our city. How many, I know this number has been put out there before, but how many businesses do we have in the city of De Pere, number one? And how many of those are actually licensed businesses, and how many are not considered a licensed business?
Larry?
Yeah, I don't have that data right here before me. We can get it for you. Again, the only ones that we have that are licensed are those that receive alcohol licenses. We do, oh, I'm sorry? Oh, and restaurant licenses, I'm sorry. So the food and alcohol are really the only ones that we do. So if it's all other types of businesses, we do not have licenses for. But we can get those. Yeah.
Kristen?
Just to add to that a little bit, I did reach out to Trista, the sanitarian, today. She provided a list of licenses that the city provides. It's on the application. It does include things like tattoo parlors, swimming pools, lodging, campgrounds. So there are several licenses. I don't have the numbers either on how many of those have been issued, but the health code and our ordinances do allow for businesses like that to also be licensed.
Well, okay, thank you. Tattoo places and no campgrounds. County campgrounds.
So we have 2 tattoo places.
That I'm aware of.
I'm sorry, Alderperson Rash?
So we know of 2 licensed businesses so far, but I would like that information, Larry, for the number of licensed businesses we have and what our category that is, compared to the total number of businesses that we have, so we can understand the impact. The other question I have is in the ordinance, under enforcement, I believe it is, section 1, businesses and organizations may rely on individual statements if they claim to be exempt from this section for the reasons permitted herein. Would that same exemption also apply to an employee of that business, that employee also being HIPAA protected?
Larry?
Go ahead, Kristen.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so we talked about the enforcement side of it a little bit earlier, and that a business, if an organization has an individual comes in, they have to basically take that individual statement that they have a health reason that exempts them. We can't question that under the ordinance. Does that same exemption apply to an employee who is employed by a De Pere business employer? Would they have that same right to be exempt from wearing a mask while they're at work? Under the ordinance, yes. If the business has their own individual policy, that would be up to the business owner. But under the ordinance, yes, they would. That was my question regarding the ordinance. Okay, thank you. And then I know there's been some talk about some potential amendments to the resolution, and I don't want to kind of jump ahead of anybody. So if somebody else has some amendments that they're looking to do, I'd be willing to pass that over right now and kind of see if we've got some cohesive examples or ideas, I should say, as to what this says. The other thing that I would add to this, and this question came up to me under, let me find the spot here. I believe it's under the definitions section. It will be item number 7 that talks specifically about gyms or other similar indoor facilities. There is a comment at the end of that section that talks about the individual wears a face covering at all times when not actually engaged in exercising. And my question on that is, what does engaged in exercising actually mean? How is that defined underneath this this ordinance?
Larry, you want to?
Well, I believe Alderperson Rash, you had raised a question about, or gave an example. If you don't mind, can I use the one that you gave in an email?
It's a specific one that I have for myself, for example.
Yes. So you gave the example of if you're doing sets of weights, if you're doing reps, and you need to take a 1 to 2 minute rest in between reps, do you have to put a mask on, for example, in between doing that? I don't think that's the intent of the ordinance. The intent is if, for example, you're coming into or leaving a gym or an athletic club, or going to or from a restroom or something like that, that's really what they're targeting. I think there would be an anticipation that people obviously aren't fully engaged in exercising 100% of the time while they're doing things like weight reps or whatever sport they're doing.
So the gym owners that I've talked to appreciate the fact that they are not being required to force people to wear masks while they're working out. I just think it's a little ambiguous, and you could get another patron who disagrees with how it's being applied to somebody else and creating a conflict within that organization at that time. But the gym owners do appreciate the fact that the ordinance would allow for people to work out without wearing a mask. So I just think there's some gray area in here that might need to be cleaned up.
Larry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, potentially we could add language that would clarify as you're in common areas or going to and from, common areas or something like that to clarify it.
Well, I can add a little bit to that. Under the definition section where it talks about an indoor area accessible to the public. So just to reiterate, section B of the ordinance says that masks are basically required only in indoor areas accessible to the public, and that is defined as any interior structure interior area of any structure or premise used in whole or part. It goes on to say resort, assemblage, etc., or other use by the public to which the public customarily has access. So I think the intention is that this is going to be required in areas that are accessible to the public. Now, within individual buildings and locations, there might be specific rooms or locations that aren't generally open to the public, where masks might not be required. And again, a lot of it is going to be up to the business owner to define some of those areas, to report upon if they feel like the ordinance is not being complied with. They can certainly reach out to the police department. So it's very difficult to define specifically every definition within the ordinance and to make all those gray area goes away. I'm happy to make some amendments if that's what's voted on, and we can certainly work on cleaning that up. But again, discretion is going to be important when we're talking about enforcement and when we're leaving it up to the business owners to kind of determine what areas are open to the public and which are not.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. And just for clarification on open to the public, would that include private clubs that you have key entries to get in? So it's not just anybody can walk off the street and enter? Would that still be considered accessible to the public, or is that because it's a private club, would that be the same thing?
So if it's not open to the general public, it would not be covered under the ordinance.
Thank you.
Before we go on here, I just want to clarify one thing, because I don't want to mislead or give false information. But I looked over my notes and I mentioned about School District of De Pere. The School District of De Pere's board has not voted for school masks yet. That is August 3rd. It's the recommendation at this time to have the students masked, but that will not be made until August 3rd. So I just want to make sure I clarify that. The recommendation is for K through 12, but it's not until August 3rd. Okay? There are alderpersons.
Alderperson Hanson.
Alderperson Hanson, go ahead.
And just elaborating on that a little bit, and the Assistant City Attorney Kristen can correct me if I'm wrong, but because the ordinance says that masks are only required in areas accessible to the public, technically speaking, masks are not required in classrooms within schools, but the school districts have the authority to require them in classrooms. So really, for residents that have concerns about students wearing masks in classrooms, that is something that needs to be addressed at the school district and school board level. Is that correct, Assistant City Attorney Kristen?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then one other quick question before we move on. Green Bay's ordinance initially required the violations to be a trespassing offense. The council ultimately decided to have a $10 fine plus court fees. If somebody is refusing to leave a business, if they're really acting belligerently, does the police department still have the authority to issue trespassing or disorderly conduct citations if it rises to that level?
Yes, they would have the enforcement or the ability to enforce any of the other ordinances and state laws that they already have enforcement authority over.
Okay. And then people who are in violation, they have the $10 fee for first offense and goes up from that. And then there's the court fees. What are those typically running at?
So, and this goes to the resolution, but I can answer that question quickly. It's a $10 fine plus cost comes out to $73.60. A $25 fine plus cost comes out to $92.50. And a $50 fine plus cost comes out to $124.
Okay, thank you.
Other alderpersons, questions or comments?
Alderperson Carpenter.
I have a question.
Alderperson Carpenter, I think I heard you first. Go ahead.
Yes, my question is, so if I go into an establishment that have a medical condition, they just gonna have to take my word for it. So if the police happen to come in because somebody calls the cops and says there's a person in there without it, do the police just take my word for it, or are they gonna go more investigating to figure out what the problem is?
Kristen?
Under the ordinance, the police department or the health department would also just take the individual's word for it.
Thank you.
I think someone else had a question or comment.
It was me, Amy.
Alderperson Cuniger.
So this is more of an inquiry that's not directly related to the ordinance, but about the ordinance. In our last city council meeting, last two actually, we have referenced a refund support bill that we can use costs that are incurred from the city as far as cleaning and other things to get a refund for COVID related expenses. I'm wondering if, in support of businesses and public spaces in the community, if we as a city can take on an allocation of masks that then could be distributed to those that would like them, if those funds could be used for that to support our businesses.
Larry?
It was my understanding that question was raised during one of the sessions that the league had the governor's representatives attend. And in that discussion, cities could not use the money to provide PPE to private entities or businesses. That would not be a reimbursable cost. Now, I don't know if that has changed since then because they've been consistently changing what you can or can't use. So we can follow up with it and check again. But in the last conversation, we would not be able to be reimbursed for that.
Okay, what about signage for distribution, much like a poster that, you know, has mask wearing best practices as well as what's in and out of the ordinance? Would those costs be reimbursable?
I would have to check. I'm not sure. I have not heard a question on that specifically.
Debbie, go ahead.
So I'd like to answer that. We at the health department have also received some grants. So I would be happy to consider using some of that funding for that kind of signage. I think that would be a good use of education and distribution among the cities. So I like that idea. I think that's something that we should certainly consider.
Fantastic. How fast could something be turned around like that? Would that be something that we need to put into the ordinance? I would like to make sure something like that happens. And in order to do that, does it need to be integrated into the ordinance?
Debbie?
I don't believe it does need to be integrated into the ordinance, and we can work on it right away. Usually we can get posters and banners made within a couple of weeks at the very most. So we could start working on it right away. If you trust that we use, you know, so that it doesn't have to go to council again, but we would use the best language and signage that we could. And again, this is to encourage masking and the proper usage of masks. Am I correct?
Sure. And I think if we put our heads to it, we can probably do better in a couple of weeks. We may be able to get this down to days. So yeah, we can, to answer that, Alderperson Cuniger, I'm sure we can get that fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I also have somebody that could get that printed pretty quickly. So yes, I would like to make sure that that is something. I mean,
That's
if it's
great.
me in my garage, I'll do it.
And
Yeah,
I
but
guess
the
my
whole point-
question,
the whole point would be to outline what is in and out of the ordinance and how to encourage the desired outcome of keeping everyone healthy, and encourage change behavior from the greater public. That would be the intent.
Yeah, and I think first we're not going to really know what, to put on this poster, banner, whatever, until this actually passes, and goes through the second route. But you want specific stuff on this particular poster, and we're not really sure exactly what that is. Larry?
Yeah, I think what we can do, there's a couple ways that we would typically handle this. The one is that we could print things in-house ourselves. We've acquired a specific type of weatherproof paper that we've used actually on the exterior of our buildings and doors that we were able to acquire from, I don't know, someplace around here. That works really nice, and we can actually run it right through our copy machines. So that's one. The other part is we also use Badger Printing right here in De Pere, and they have exceptional turnaround time. So if we were to give them material, say we want to do pamphlets or something like that, they could probably work with us to do something quite quickly as well. So that would be the two ways that we would typically address something like this. And again, once an ordinance is adopted, and we know what the wording we want to put on those, we could probably do it fairly quick.
Hi, my
Shayna.
name is Mike Schultz, and
I'm sorry. This is a closed meeting right now, so anyone in the audience must mute, or I'll have to ask that person to leave. So this is just for the alderpersons. We are in closed session right now, or not closed session, but we're in regular session right now. Alderperson Cuniger, did you have anything else?
No, that covers it for me, just the amendment piece, but I'll wait like Alderperson Dean Rash had mentioned as well.
Okay, we could be pretty close to that point, by the way. Other alderpersons?
This is Shayna.
Alderperson Levin.
Back to the educational materials for businesses. Are we planning on mailing those out? How are we planning on dispersing those?
That's a great question.
this is Debbie. What has worked for us over the past year is actually emailing them. We have the roster, and we email those to them. We did that with the document as far as reopening Brown County, and some of the other educational things that we've done for them. But we could certainly have pamphlets and signage available, and should they request it, we could certainly see how we could get it to them.
Larry?
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways. I think the emailing it, if they want to just print their own and put them up, is fine. We could also make, if you choose to have us have hard copies available, that we would work with the definitely De Pere and De Pere Chamber as well to assist us with distribution. So I think we would just have to work as a collaborative team to get them out if people wanted hard copies, but we could also email as Debbie indicated.
Yeah, we can do public announcements as well too, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, on our city website, urging businesses, if we do this, that they can get a really nice poster at the city of De Pere. So I think through that kind of outreach, we should be able to get that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Great suggestion. Other alderpersons, comments, questions, amendments, whatever you want to do.
Alderperson Rash, I got a couple of questions, comments.
Sure, go ahead.
Again. Some of the suggestions that Alderperson Cunninger has suggested probably have some merit in terms of posters and education, but I firmly believe that we do not need to have a mandate to make that happen. I think the idea of putting some of that stuff out there from an educational standpoint and encouragement of people to wear masks really sits better into an advisory resolution versus a mandate. Question I have, this is for Kristen, our Assistant City Attorney. Alderperson Estercon had made a comment at one point, it might have been very early in the meeting, that if we pass this resolution, we could just as easily unpass it, and I'm not sure if that's the right word. We could just as easily change it a week from now. Having been around this for a long time, I know that's really difficult, but what is the possibility of something like that happening, or what's the process that we'd have to go through? Just so people who heard that understand that passing a resolution such as this is not as easy to unpass once it's been done.
Well, just like any other ordinance, this could be repealed by the council. So the sunset provision that's currently included does automatically repeal it upon termination of the declaration of emergency as stated previously. But that doesn't mean that the council couldn't bring this back and repeal it. That's happened on occasion for other ordinances that maybe have been superseded by state law or are not really being enforced by a department or something along those lines. So ordinances do get repealed, and that's as simple as putting it on the agenda and then voting on that just like you would pass it. So I mean, it would be up to somebody to put that on the agenda and then vote on repealing that ordinance or amending it.
Okay, thank you. So there's a process to it that we would have to go through. So
that's correct. Yes.
So real quick, I guess I'll one thing that we've talked quite a bit about is enforcement so far tonight around that. And if I could, the First Amendment that I would like to present to the ordinance, I got to find my spot here. I feel like former Alderperson Crevier trying to find my page.
No, you're on your own there, Alderperson Rash.
Yeah,
don't forget anyone else.
I'm good. Okay. Here we are. So under enforcement section 3 or item 3, in the enforcement section, I would like to offer an amendment here that this be changed to only state the police chief and their designees are authorized to enforce this section. And my rationale for that is just out of the fact that they are trained and have the proper training and expertise to handle situations that might get a little difficult. And that's their role, is to take that on. And I don't know that fits into the health director's role. So I think this is more of a safety concern when situations do escalate. And I think that's better handled by the police chief and his designees, which I'm assuming that means the police officers that serve our city. So I'd like to make that motion.
And I can tell you, Alderperson Rash, that the health director would be okay with that. So I believe that was an amendment, correct? And that's your motion. That would need a second.
And I will. This is Alderperson Carpenter. I'll second that.
We have a motion by Alderperson Rash, seconded by Alderperson Carpenter, to amend. I believe it's all taken down, correct? And take the health director out of that portion of the resolution. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And
That amendment.
Thank you. And I do have more, but I know Alderperson Cundinger has some ideas too, so I'll yield for a little bit if she wants to speak.
All right, thank you. Alderperson Cundinger or anyone else, because I believe now we're in the amendment portion. Everyone had a chance to speak and ask questions. So Alderperson Cundinger or anyone else?
Yep, mine is also within the enforcement piece, and it would be a simple addition of the word education as the first step, as in enforcement rather than fines. So I moved to make.
Yep, nope. Hang on 1 second. Larry just needs some clarification here. 1 second.
I just want to ask the Assistant City Attorney, so would it be a warning with education, or would it just be education?
I think you could word it either way. The way that it's written in the resolution part is that once there's a citation issued, those are the penalties for the citation. So if you wanted to include a first step as an education or a warning, we can come up with some language that works in there.
Well, I guess I would look to you for how other ordinance, I would like the first step to be educational in nature. If that comes with, the wording of a warning, I would want no penalty incurred for a first, provided that it's not somebody like punching somebody else, but with the act of not doing the educational aspect of it. That's the first intent.
Yeah, and I guess I just asked that we refer that part back so that we can work on some of that language.
So then there's no motion or no move to?
Yeah, still do a motion, but then we'll just redraft it and with all the amendments that'll come back.
Okay. So I move to incorporate language that speaks to educational and warning rather than fine or violation as a first move to enforce the ordinance.
I will second that motion.
We have a motion by Alderperson Cuniger, seconded by Alderperson Esserkan. Any discussion on this amendment proposal?
Alderperson Hanson.
Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, I certainly sympathize with the motivation with Alderperson Cunningham bringing this forward. I do think education is supposed to be kind of our main goal, and, you know, compliance, not conflict, as our building inspector always likes to say. But my concern with just relying on a warning for the first time is people are not going to treat this ordinance seriously. And our first offense is already $10 plus court fees. And the assistant city attorney just said that I think it's $75. So the first offense is already kind of a slap on the wrist. I don't think we need to start with a warning. I think it undercuts what we're trying to do with this ordinance. I think, you know, employees at businesses who are trying to say, you know, you're not allowed to come in without a mask because this is city policy. Customer can just say, well, what are you going to do? Call the police and they're going to give me a warning. You know, it's just going to encourage people to flout the ordinance, the intent of the ordinance. And so I'm going to vote against this amendment.
Thank you. Other alderpersons on this amendment?
Alderperson Rash.
Alderperson Rash.
My only concern for this piece being in here is this ties more into the fine enforcement side of it, which is the next resolution. However, if we're actually going down this path of putting the education piece in, like as was suggested in this amendment, and I don't disagree with it being education-based versus fine-based, then as we continue to look at this ordinance keeps leaning more towards an advisory resolution versus any kind of ordinance mandate enforcing this. And so we're getting to a point now where we're talking more about education, which I agree with Alderperson Cundinger. Maybe that's what's needed more than anything. But now we're looking at this more as an advisory situation versus actually having an ordinance mandate. And I'm wondering how that can be incorporated or cleaned up in this to reflect more of the wishes, what I think I'm hearing Alderperson Cundinger talk about.
I guess I would clarify then by saying that the first step would be a fine or education, much like anything already is. I just want it to be that the clarification is that our intent is to encourage the public behavior, and that is instead of that the first. I guess if it doesn't need to be clarified, that's fine. But my hope is that just like anything, like a speeding ticket, like has already been talked about, that there is the opportunity to have it be discretionary at the discretion of the offense, if you will.
Kristen can help a little bit too here. Kristen?
Sure. So in the ordinance, it does talk about our main goal is going to be voluntary compliance. And as stated in the enforcement section, it authorizes, with the amendment that was just passed, the police department and their designees are authorized to enforce this ordinance. So just like anything, as you mentioned, Alderperson, they can have the discretion to issue a warning if that's what they choose. They could take no action if they respond. The police department would retain that discretion in this ordinance just as they have in any others, so they wouldn't have to issue a citation at first blush. They could certainly issue a warning. Again, they could take no action, or they could issue that first citation, which under the current resolution that we are taking up next would be a $10 fine.
Okay, with that clarification, God, I'd like to rescind that, because then it would, my amendment. So I don't know if that means that the second needs to
yes, the second
that
will,
as well.
Yep. Alderperson Esserkan, are you okay with the motioner to rescind that based on the explanation?
In light of new information, I will rescind, yes.
All right, thank you. That motion is now rescinded. Thank you. That amendment is now rescinded. We can now move on to something else.
This is Alderperson Carpenter.
Alderperson Carpenter.
So if establishment chooses not to let me in, and this would be for the assistant city attorney there, Kristen. If they choose not to let me in, that's their right. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what I'm trying to get all the person hands is saying, I mean, right now, a person that doesn't want to wear a mask can get away with this just by saying I have a medical condition.
Under the ordinance, that's correct.
That's it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Quick follow-up.
Alderperson Rash.
Just quick follow-up to Dan's question. So if the person says they've got a medical reason for not wearing a mask, can the business then ask them to leave?
The business can enforce their own policies. So if they want somebody to leave based on their own policies, they can. Our ordinance would not specify that or request that or demand that from the business.
But if and just kind of figuring, fleshing this out a little bit more, but if that business was only complying with the city's mandate, then they technically could not ask that person to leave because it's not their company policy. Am I wrong in that assumption, or?
I can try to answer that the best I can. I can only speak to what our ordinance would mandate, and it would require that if they ask and somebody just states that they have a medical exemption, the business owner would have to take that at face value. We would not be requiring or asking the businesses to ask for documentation or proof or anything along those lines.
Okay, so I guess my understanding of that would be if the business did not have their own policy in place about mask wearing, mandating it, they're only following the mandate from the city. If that individual came in and said, well, I don't have to wear one because of a medical reason, that business would have to allow them in to transact whatever business they were doing.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other alderpersons, comments, questions? Amendments? Ready to vote?
It's me again, James.
Alderperson Rash, you heard the third and final time, did you not? Or did I not say that?
No, you did not quite get that far yet. I cut you off just before that. So, real quick, I'll do the ones that I have here if we can take them individually. I think I just have two more, but
sure.
I just want to clean up some language in here. In the page 2, the 4 bullet points that are there, there is some language not consistent with the CDC's language, which is referencing back to bullet point number 2. Studies have shown that wearing a cloth face covering can prevent the spread of COVID, and the actual wording on the CDC website actually states, let me find it here again, I'm pulling out my, actually states may help, so it's not as definitive as can prevent. The CDC site states, studies have shown that wearing cloth face coverings may help the spread of COVID-19. It does not say can prevent. And if we're going to quote the CDC, I think we should be consistent in the language. So I'd make it to change that wording.
Okay. This is your amendment. If that's an amendment, we need a second.
Alderperson Rue, I'll second.
I have a motion by Alderperson Rash, second by Alderperson Rue. Any discussion on what Alderperson Rash had said regarding changing words around?
This is Shayna. Does Debbie have anything to say about that? Does Debbie have anything to add to that? I'm trying to look it up myself, so.
Okay, Debbie.
And I don't have it right in front of me. I did a little bit ago. I don't. I think in my mind, it really says it's very similar language that, and it showed, I was going to quote a JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association article that CDC supported, saying that face masks do reduce the mitigation of the spread of the virus. I don't have those exact words, but I believe that what's being said or what's being amended pretty much says the same thing. I mean, I would feel comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments regarding the amendment currently on the floor?
Alderperson Hanson.
Alderperson Hanson, go ahead.
Sorry, Alderperson Rash, can you repeat it again?
Yes. It's changing and I gotta pull it back up again. So, and I did, just for point of reference, I did confirm this afternoon when I was just looking at some things again, just to make sure I understood what I was asking for. But in that bullet point number 2, studies have shown that wearing a cloth face covering can prevent, is the wording we have. And studies have shown that wearing a cloth face covering may, let's see. Too many screens to flip through.
Spread of COVID.
It may help the spread of COVID, not can prevent.
May help prevent?
May help prevent the spread of COVID, not can prevent.
Okay. Clarification.
So studies have shown that wearing a cloth face covering may help prevent the spread of COVID-19, which is the wording from the CDC website that I found. Not
Debbie has a clarification here.
I would add, I did bring up that JAMA article, and it says CDC reviewed the latest science and affirms that cloth face coverings are a critical tool in the fight against COVID-19 that could reduce the spread of the disease, particularly when used universally within communities. There is increasing evidence that cloth face coverings help prevent people who have COVID-19 from spreading the virus to others.
So I'm on the CDC website right now, and of course I didn't save the link myself. But the bullet points that we have written in our resolution, all 4 of them are, the other 3 are spot on what it says on the CDC site, except for that one, which is number 2. And it was just that change of wording from can prevent to may help prevent.
Okay, so I think we all heard what you said. If anyone else has a question or comment, otherwise we can go ahead and vote on that amendment that's on the floor. That's that.
Do we have a second?
There was a second by Alderperson Rue. Is that what you're going to ask?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Right, Alderperson Rue?
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion or comments regarding the motion, the amendment on the floor? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
We're doing a roll call vote. So here we go.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Alderperson Estercon?
Aye.
Johnson?
Nay.
Coniger?
Aye.
Ledvina?
Nay.
Nelson?
Nay.
Rash?
Aye.
Rue?
Aye.
Carpenter?
Aye.
5 ayes, 3 nays.
Is it 5 ayes and 3 nays?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the amendment passes. It carries. All right. What else do we have?
I'm looking.
Anyone else other than Alderperson Rash have an amendment?
Alderperson Hanson.
Alderperson Hanson, go ahead.
Going back to Alderperson Carpenter's point earlier about places of worship, you know, the non-discrimination ordinance from day one explicitly exempted places of worship, and there was a lot of confusion about that. And it made sense because obviously a lot of churches felt that it was a violation of their fundamental religious beliefs. But not wearing face masks is not some kind of fundamental religious belief. So I don't really understand the rationale to exempt places of worship. I think it also could create some more tension in the community for businesses who say, you know, we have, this ordinance applies to us, but doesn't apply to places of worship. And so I do think it would be helpful to have more consistency across the board. So I would make an amendment to strike places of worship from the exemption section.
All right, thank you. Sorry, sorry. Do we have a second?
This is Faith, I'll second.
Alderperson Nelson. We have a motion by Alderperson Hanson, seconded by Alderperson Nelson, regarding places of worship. Any discussion?
Alderperson Rash.
Alderperson Rash.
I think this amendment puts us into a very difficult position again with the religious faithful in our community. And I would strongly suggest that we don't go down this path. We've already lost one legal battle, and we're just looking to set up another one. So if we're really concerned about the community, I would urge those of us who are still haven't said anything about this to not support this amendment, and I will not be supporting it.
Anyone else have any comments regarding this amendment? Seeing there are none, all those in favor of the worship amendment and taking that portion out, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
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 And a cricket, apparently.
Do I need a, did you guys catch, should we go roll call vote?
I'd request a roll call vote.
You got it, yep. Ahead of you. Roll call vote, please, Carrie.
Alderperson Hanson?
Aye.
Henniger?
Nay.
Ledvina?
Did you get me? Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Alderperson Nelson?
Aye.
Alderperson Nelson?
Aye. I think I have a cricket in our garage, so aye.
Aye? Okay, thank you.
You hear me? Yeah,
Rash?
sorry.
No problem.
Aye.
Wait, Alderperson Rash?
I'm sorry, nay.
You won't get that again, Alderperson.
My hopes up, Alderperson.
My vote is nay. Thank you, Alderperson Hanson, for correcting me. Nay.
Rue?
Nay.
Carpenter?
Nay.
Essercon?
Nay.
We have a
I think it's
5-3.
5-3, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, motion fails 5-3.
Motion fails 5-3. Other amendments?
Alderperson Rash.
Alderperson Rash?
So, and I'm going to need a little assistance from our assistant city attorney here. My concern when I read through this, and the one area that is the glaring concern for me, is page 3, which would be the second whereas. Whereas the city of De Pere intends to gain voluntary compliance from all individuals with the recommendations from CDC and local healthcare providers concerning the wearing of face masks. My concern here is we're asking and we're stating in this resolution that we want to gain voluntary compliance, but at the end we say, but recognizes that penalties are necessary to ensure such compliance. And if I make an amendment to remove the wording, but recognizes that penalties are necessary to ensure such compliance, would this resolution define this? So somebody's speaking in the background, if they can mute, please.
Yeah, someone's in the background. Could you please mute? Hang on 1 second, Alderperson Rash.
Thanks.
I think we have it now. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So if that wording is taken out, and that would be an amendment that I'll make here in a second, but if that wording is taken out and passes, does this change the dynamics of this resolution to be more of an advisory resolution at that point, because there would be no penalties associated with it?
Well, the actual section of the ordinance that would be added to our code is listed under section 1, where after it says, therefore, the Common Council of the City of De Pere do ordain as follows. That would be the actual.
Again, we're going to ask anyone out there in the audience that you please mute your phones, your devices, whatever you have, or we will have to ask the moderator to take you off the call. Thank you.
So again, the section of the ordinance that's going to go into our code is 74-13. That would still require that face masks be required pursuant to the ordinance. And then the resolution that would follow, which is number 3 on our agenda, would establish a fee schedule for a violation of that ordinance. If you remove that last sentence of the final whereas paragraph, it won't change the fact that a citation can be issued and penalties can be imposed.
Okay, thank you. So the part that has that piece in it would be in section 1, but would that follow under just the enforcement section of that, or would that be all of section 1?
I'm confused as to your question.
So my question is, if, we're asking for voluntary compliance, but then we're throwing a penalty on it. So this whereas doesn't actually do anything related to, you could have that same section in there, but if you remove out the enforcement piece of it at the bottom of section 1, which would be part D, enforcement, bullet points 1, 2, and 3, if that was removed, then this would function more as an advisory amendment or resolution versus a mandate or punitive resolution. Am I understanding that correctly, or am I really off base here?
Well, it works in concert with each other. So the whole ordinance has to be taken as a whole. Section B actually is the statement that requires face coverings, which says every individual age 5 or older shall wear a face covering that covers their nose, et cetera, et cetera. So it goes on to, that's the section that requires the face covering. The enforcement section really talks about businesses being able to ask customers basically to wear a mask or to leave, and then it gives that enforcement authority to the police chief. So I hope I'm answering your question. I'm trying my best to answer your question, but.
No, I think you are. I think I'm following you. So, and this is where the advice is coming in handy. So if I would amend to remove that, but recognizes the penalties in the second whereas, and then also under section 1, item B, and then also item D, that would then turn this into more of an advisory versus an actual mandate. Does that sound more like it?
I think if the intention is to turn this into advisory, I wouldn't advise having an actual ordinance. It should just be a resolution. So we wouldn't actually input anything into our municipal code, which again, is a requirement imposed by the city. So if that's the route you're going, I wouldn't suggest this is the way we do it. I would suggest that it just be a resolution of the council stating that we are encouraging face masks or something along those lines, and scratch De Pere Municipal Code section 74-13.
Gotcha. Okay, that answers it even more clear. Okay, thank you for that, because I guess the reason why I bring that up is a lot of the conversation I've heard tonight is, even for the people who are against that, they're okay with wearing masks when they go into a place of business that's mandating it. It's just they don't want to be forced or under fear of penalty for that. And I've heard some conversation tonight within the council itself that, to me, kind of leans towards advisory in some sense and just education, which I think is probably a stronger way to get buy-in and compliance within the city for things that we think are important versus a punitive setup for it. So I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Other persons have any comments and or questions, discussions? If not, we can move ahead and I assume vote on this.
This is Casey. I have a question for Kristen.
Alderperson Nelson.
Yeah, just wondering. So for the cost associated with the fee, and I guess we could probably touch on this on the second part too. But does council have any? Do we have any ability to lessen that amount of fee that gets tacked on to the $10 fine?
The associated court costs are established by municipal court, and those include a penalty assessment, a court assessment, a jail assessment, and a crime lab fee. Those are all tacked on to the initial forfeiture. So the only thing the council has authority to establish is that initial forfeiture.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, that said, I believe we're prepared to vote, so we'll do a roll call vote on ordinance 20-10, creating section 74-13, De Pere Municipal Code requiring face coverings. I'm assuming we do as amended. Again, ordinance 20-10, creating section 74-13, De Pere Municipal Code requiring face coverings as amended.
Mayor, I'd ask for a roll call vote on this.
You got it. That said, we will have a roll call vote. We're getting there.
Alderperson Kundiger.
Aye.
Ledvina.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Rash.
Nay.
Rue.
Nay.
Carpenter.
Nay.
Esserkan.
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
That's on my tally. The motion passes 5-3 with Alderperson Rash, Alderperson Rue, and Alderperson Carpenter voting nay. There will be, because it's not unanimous, there will be a second reading at the next council meeting, which is the first meeting in August. I don't have the exact date.
August 4th.
August 4th. Thank you. And by the way, I do want to say this. I commend the audience when we went to the public and how civil they were in the discussions and the dialogue. I also commend the alderpersons as well during this very, very difficult discussion and dialogue that we had regarding face mask coverings. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm very proud how the residents and the alderpersons treated this very, very serious discussion item we had. So thank you very much. Item 3, Resolution 20-82, establishing penalties for violations of Section 74-13, De Pere Municipal Code requiring face coverings.
Alderperson Hanson, move to approve.
This is Casey. I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Hanson, seconded by Alderperson Nelson. Any discussion?
Well, if nobody wants to speak, I will.
Just wait, Alderperson Rash. I'll give it some time here. No, just kidding. Go ahead, Alderperson Rash.
Hey, and for the record, it's a good thing this is a virtual meeting, so you couldn't see my facial expressions and hand gestures during some of the conversation, but
I could sense them.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. So I would like to offer an amendment up to this resolution that the first offense be met with education. And then the second offense could be where discretion. I know that the city attorney talked about discretion, or city assistant attorney talked about discretion, and that would fall into first offense, second offense, third offense, and fourth to subsequent offenses. So the first offense would actually just be education. So my amendment is to add a first offense education and then bump the other ones down numerically.
And then you would still keep the same dollar amounts, Alderperson Rash, with your amendment, just so I'm clear?
I would with mine, but I would leave it open because Alderperson Nelson had talked about reducing those, and I would let that up to him.
Okay. I believe that was a motion, correct? So I need a second.
This is Mike. I will second that motion.
Motion by Alderperson Rash, second by Alderperson Esserkan. Any discussion? Questions, comments?
Alderperson Hanson.
Alderperson Hanson, go ahead.
Yes, I already commented on this. I feel it undercuts the intent of the ordinance. But to Assistant City Attorney's point, we already have the flexibility built into the ordinance for our police departments to handle it as they see fit. They can just issue a warning. They can do nothing. They can do the $10 citation. I don't think we should be telling our police officers that, no, you have to do a warning every time on the first offense. I think they we should back them up and give them the ability to issue a $10 citation fee if that's what they choose. And they have that flexibility right now, and I'm all for keeping that.
Thank you, Alderperson Hanson. Other comments and or discussion?
Alderperson Rash.
Alderperson Rash.
Yeah, and when I listened to Alderperson Cunningham talk about this, the reason why I bring this up is because, again, we go back to the resolution that narrowly passed just recently that discussed the fact that we're looking for voluntary compliance. So if we're giving it to the officer's discretion and they decide they want to do a $10 fine on first offense, that doesn't get to the voluntary compliance and education piece that Alderperson Cunningham was discussing. So that's why I'm adding the first offense as education. So that's mandated first versus allowing them just to tackle it with a $10 fine right out of the gate and create some other possible issues down the road.
Thank you. Other alderpersons, comments, questions, discussion?
This is Casey. I just have a question for, I have a question for Kristen. If this passes, would this be kind of a uniquely written ordinance in that, typically for first violation, it's, I'm guessing that none of our other violations have a first offense be education. I think that discretion is built into all of our ordinances, all of, pretty much everything. So I definitely agree with Alderman Hanson that this somewhat undercuts that. But can you just comment on whether or not any other ordinances are built in that way?
Larry or Kristen?
Yeah, it would be very unique. And the resolution states that these penalties shall be included in the municipal court bond schedule. So I think if anything, it could be a $0 fine for the first offense, but then you'd still have associated municipal court costs. If we were to input the word education into the first offense, you could still be subject to municipal court costs if you end up with a citation in municipal court. That's something that can't be changed. So it would be very unique to not have a dollar amount in this resolution or in the municipal court bond schedule.
Larry?
Yeah, if I could just add in, I know we don't have the chief here, but I know his preference is typically always to have the officers have discretion. If you have someone who is, let's just say, not being very cooperative in things, in order to be able to do the fine, might persuade people in a way that the officers are more comfortable in working with than to try to go the other direction. We really do allow the officers discretion and have always done so. So it would be very unique in the context of not giving them that discretion and how they could handle the call. At least coming from me, my recommendation would be to allow them to maintain that discretion as they have with all of our other activities. But again, it's up to you. It's a policy discussion at this point. But at least from the staff perspective, I would recommend allowing the officers to maintain that discretion.
And I will chime in as well, too, in the discussions I have had, that's probably pretty important, that you keep it as is and give the officers their discretion. I don't think the education portion is necessary, and it's not anywhere else. So I think I strongly suggest you keep this as is.
I can add one more thing.
Oh, Larry.
And the other thing, if the intent is, and I think it's coming through loud and clear, the intent is we really want to educate and provide warnings more so than give the citation. We can pass that on, obviously, to our police, and the chief and the captains and the sergeants would pass that on to the officers. So I think that as long as they understand the intent of what we're trying to do, they would use that discretion in that direction as much as possible.
Other comments or questions? I think then we're probably ready to vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderperson Rash?
Yeah.
I think was that you? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was me grunting there. So I guess my concern is, and I can understand that it wasn't necessarily a requirement for Chief Spiderweeden to be on the call tonight, but I'm just wondering if it makes more sense for us to table this to the next meeting so we can actually get the chief's input, because I think that's been some of the question, and I appreciate, Larry speaking on it and Mayor giving your point of view, but I'd like to hear from the chief directly, what his thoughts and feelings are on this.
Sure, and it's going to come back anyway to the second reading.
That's only if it doesn't pass unanimously.
Sorry, go ahead, say it one more time. Go ahead.
So the ordinance has to come back to the next meeting. So what I was trying to tell the mayor is that since the ordinance wouldn't be in effect yet, to bring the resolution back to the next meeting and not take action on it tonight is fine, because there really isn't anything that's being applied to. So if you want to refer the resolution back to staff or simply table it, either one would work if you want it to be discussed with the chief present for the next meeting.
Correct. And that would be my recommendation, but because I know that, I don't remember who asked for the chief's input earlier, but it may have been Alderperson Hanson, but I don't remember for sure.
Alderperson Rash, and if I understand correctly, he has to, because you made the motion and then we had a second, correct? So you and the person that seconded would have to rescind, correct? And then come back and, go with the table or refer back to staff or something. Does that make sense, Alderperson Rash?
Yeah, and if the original motion and second on the resolution that was made prior to the amendment are okay taking theirs off and tabling until the next meeting where we can discuss it with the chief, I'd be okay taking that amendment back then.
Wait, let's back up a little bit, I think.
Yep, Alderperson Hanson moved and Alderperson Nelson seconded to approve the resolution.
Yeah, there's no amendment, right?
Well, Dean moved to amend, Alderperson Rash moved to amend, seconded by Alderperson Estercon.
To amend and have the first offense be education.
No, we have not voted on that.
So if you even vote to deny the pending amendment and the resolution as is, and make a motion to table it or refer back to staff, or they would have to rescind the motion.
I can't hear the discussion going on in council chambers, and I think we should be privy to
I'm
that.
sorry, I don't think his mic is on. Sorry, go ahead. And Larry can say this right now.
Well, actually, I was trying to provide instructions.
Yeah,
to the mayor
it's just easier this way. Go ahead, Larry.
But what I was indicating is that you can either make a vote to deny the motion to amend, and then do another vote to deny the motion to approve the resolution, and then you're starting from scratch, and then you could take and make a motion to table or refer to staff, or you would have to rescind the motion to amend and then rescind the motion. It typically, what we've done in the past when we've been at this level is we've typically just done a vote to deny the amendment and deny the resolution as a cleaner way to do it, and then start over. So I would recommend just doing a vote on the pending amendment, and then do a vote on the actual resolution. And if they deny both, then somebody could do a motion to table or refer back to staff.
Does that make sense to everybody?
It does, but my concern on that one, Larry, is if it doesn't necessarily, if we vote to deny it tonight, then that resolution dies going forward.
No, so, again, if you vote to deny the resolution right now or deny the motion to approve, you can still do a motion to table.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, I guess I was unclear of that, and I've never heard that explanation before. So how does it? So this is kind of a point of rules right now. How does, if we actually vote on the motion as, so let's just say that the amendment dies, right? We vote on the motion without the amendment that was motioned by Alderperson Hanson and Alderperson Nelson, and that dies. How are we able to bring that back to table it after that motion has been denied? Doesn't that end that resolution at that point?
Well, I think you could make it, somebody could make another motion to table it or refer it back to staff, and then it could come back at the next meeting.
Before we actually vote on the main motion, correct?
Yeah, he's just looking at the order here.
I'm looking at the order of the vote, because if we vote to deny the resolution, then that resolution is dead.
Yeah, I guess I would agree then. Go ahead and make your motion or your vote to deny the amendment, then make a motion to table at that point. Because
correct.
It's
okay.
Yep, you're correct.
I agree.
That's the proper order.
I agree as well.
Clarifying. Yep.
Does that make more sense now?
It does, because I think we had it out of order there for a second, and we would ended up denying the motion, the resolution, which would have killed the resolution.
Sure. Yep, I understand that. So we're going to start with the amendment first, correct? We're starting with the amendment first. And any more?
Alderperson Carpenter.
Alderperson Carpenter, go ahead.
So just so we're all clear, for denying the amendment that Dean and Mike made, our vote is what?
Yes, on the amendment, if you vote nay, that will kill that amendment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, for the amendment that was proposed by Alderperson Rash and
Alderperson Estercon.
Alderperson Essercon, for the motion of the amendment, all those in favor? Those opposed?
Nay.
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 All right, motion fails for the amendment. Now we'll go back to the original motion on the resolution.
I'd like to make another amendment at this time then. It's Alderperson Rash.
Another motion, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alderperson Rash.
Yeah, so at this time I'd make a motion to table this resolution until the next council meeting so we can get feedback from Chief of Police Derek Biderweeden.
Alderperson Carpenter will second that.
Motion by Alderperson Rash, seconded by Alderperson Carpenter to table. All those in favor?
Alderperson Hanson,
Alderperson Hanson, go ahead.
if this gets tabled to the next.
I'm sorry, unfortunately, there's no discussion on a motion to table. Correct? Correct. There's no discussion on a motion to table. Sorry about that, Alderperson Hanson.
Even clarification questions?
Not at all. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to have the vote then. All those in favor of the motion to table this resolution, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion carries, I believe, and help me with this here, Alderperson Hanson, Alderperson Cuniger, and Alderperson Nelson voting nay. Was I correct with that?
Yep.
Sounds right.
Okay, I think we're good. All right, I'm trying to look for my sheet here. Again, thank you everybody for tonight's meeting, and like I said, being very civil and having the discussion about this very, very, very important discussion. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is Amy. I move to adjourn.
This is Shayna. I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Cuniger, second by Alderperson Levina. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Is Kristen still on?